Welcome to this session on master plan. This is session 4 and this is the third part, and the name of the subject is export merchandising and EXIM documentation. Now, to explain the master list, we've taken an example of a factory ABC, a hypothetical factory. And to start with, if you look at the client list, it's any normal garment export factory would have clients like Mango, Zara, H&M, Paul Smith, Walmart, and Abercrombie and Fitch. Now, if you look at this list of the clients, along with the client's name, you can also see the name of the product. And the reason why this list looks like this is that this looks like this factory is predominantly doing women's wear. And they are a little bit of menswear also and kidswear also. Now, the fact that if a factory is very good with women's wear, they would want to concentrate more on women's wear. But eventually what happens is that after you've been doing, let's say, women's wear for Paul Smith or Walmart for a long time, gradually when you also get inquiries from the buyer, from the client that, why don't you also do menswear? We'd like to give you the orders. You gradually develop your men's production capability, and over a period of time you add menswear, and once you've done that you may also add kidswear. So any factory which is, let's say, mid-size or small factory, it is rarely seen that small factory is doing women's wear and menswear and kidswear, everything. It does not happen like that. So one factory prima facie would specialize in one product category, let's say women's wear or menswear, and then when they become big over a period of time, they would also add other product categories. So for now, this factory ABC has a client list of Mango, Zara, H&M, Paul Smith, Walmart, and A&F. And now we're going to look at their order list at any given point of time. So let's say in the year 2022, the owner asks that how many orders do we have? So the merchandiser says, sir, we have an order from Mango. The name of the style is style 1, and the quantity is 2,000 pieces. It is, let's say, a double layer cotton blouse, which has a shell fabric of 40s poplin with construction of 124 by 64, and it has a lining of 80s cotton voile, and it has stitching thread. It has, let's say, front open blouse with buttons, and it also has zippers at the, let's say, the side seam, and the rest of the things like main label and size label and care label. So that's one style from Mango. We also have another style from Zara, which is another double layer blouse, which has 60s cotton cambric as, let's say, sleeve and 40s poplin body, with construction of 132 by 72, and then the rest of the things like stitching thread and 32 line buttons, grosgrain grain tape maybe at the cuff, shiny grosgrain grain tape, and then of course the main label and size label and care label, and so on and so forth. So let's say at any given point of time we take a snapshot of the list of orders which a factory has, and the factory has one style from Mango, one from Zara, one from H&M, one from Paul Smith, one from Walmart. And this is what the order looks like. And every order has a requirement of fabric 1 and then fabric 2. For Paul Smith, if you see the fourth row, Paul Smith, the style number is style 4. It has quantity of only 400 pieces, and it is made of only one fabric, which is cotton velvet. And then it has, of course, stitching thread would be used to stitch it. As trims, it has lace of 4 inches, and it has drawstring, maybe at the waist, and then the main label, size label, and care label. So this is what the order looks like, the order list. So we have the buyer's name, and then the style number and the quantity, and then of course the fabric and the accessories required to produce that particular order. Now, we now talk about the master plan. Now imagine different merchandisers are handling different buyers. So let's say one merchandiser is handling Abercrombie and Fitch, another merchandiser is happening, let's say H&M, one is handling Zara. So the merchandisers are going to get in touch with the buyer and secure the orders. Now, every merchandiser, whatever orders they take, they will have to arrange for the fabrics. So for fabric, every merchandiser is going to give the details of the fabric requirement to the fabric manager. So what would we see in the fabric department? The fabric manager is getting calls from merchandiser 1, merchandiser 2, merchandiser 3, and all the merchandisers are telling the fabric guy, the fabric manager, this is the style number, this is the quantity per unit, this is the amount of fabric that we require, this is the quality of the fabric. So all the merchandisers will be getting in touch with the fabric manager and giving the details of the fabric, the quantity, the quality and other things, and requesting the fabric manager to arrange for the fabric by the given deadline. Same is the thing which is going to happen for accessories. All the merchandisers for all of their styles, whatever other accessory requirement like stitching thread and buttons and zippers and labels and all those other things, they are going to give the details to the accessory manager. And all the merchandisers, if they have to find out whether their style, their order, whether it has reached the cutting department or not, and whether the cutting has been done or not. So for cutting of any style, anyone is going to get in touch with the cutting department. If you want the production status for your style, you are going to get in touch with the production department. Now, the production department, they are only going to get the details for production from all the merchandisers. So, going back to the fabric manager's master plan is going to look like they're going to write down all the styles with their quantities, and they're going to write down how much of what fabric is required for style 1, how much of what fabric is required for style 2, and etc. for all the styles. So fabric manager is going to make a master plan of the entire fabric requirement in the factory. Similarly, accessories department is going to make a master plan for all the accessories required for all the styles being taken by the factory. And same for production, same for finishing, quality, shipping, finance and accounts. So master plan, every department is going to make its own master plan. And the merchandiser is also going to make their own master plans. So a summation of all the styles and the required fabric or the required accessories is going to go into the master plan. So with that done, we're going to look at the checklist and alarms. Now, everyone who's working in a factory, they have their own checklists and they raise the alarms in case they find that or they feel that some process is going to get delayed, and therefore an alarm has to be sounded to the higher authorities so that they ensure that a particular process does not get delayed for whatever reasons. So on one side we have the checklist and on the other side we have the alarms. Just like the master plan, all the departments will have their own checklists. So fabric department is going to have a checklist which talks about which buyer, how many styles for each style, what are the fabrics for each fabric, what is the quantity required, and what are the target dates by which the fabric department has to ensure that the fabric is inside the factory. That is one checklist. Now, once the fabric has come inside the factory, it has to be checked for the meterage. So let's say 1000 yards have been ordered. So once the fabric has come inside the factory, first checklist is the fabric manager is going to check whether the bills are correct or not. the invoice are correct or not. Then the fabric manager is going to ask the fabric department assistants to check whether the fabric is 1000 yards or not. That is the first checklist. Second checklist, to check the fabric quality. Third checklist, to check whether the color or the shade of the fabric is matching with the standard given by the buyer. If it is matching, then it has to be sent to the buyer for approval. At the same time, the fabric has to be sent to the lab for physical and chemical tests. Whether the shrinkage, whether the fiber, the GSM, the color fastness, everything is correct or not. And if everything is correct, then the fabric department can issue the fabric to the production department. So these are the set of checklist for the fabric department. Similarly, the accessories department and the cutting and production. Now remember one thing, that let's say production, if we're looking at production department will not start the production until and unless it has got all the approvals. Until unless all the approvals are in place, they will not start the production. Once the approvals have been taken, then they will start the production. Once they start the production, they will get their production process approved. Once the production process has been approved, then they will go ahead with the bulk production. When they have done 50% of the production, they will invite the inspector, the quality inspector, for mid-inspection. Then they will call the inspector for pre-final inspection, which is done when 85% of the production has been done. And then, of course, once 100% of the production has been done, then the quality inspector has to be invited for the final inspection. So while the production is happening, the production people will have their checklist, whether every day the daily targets are being met or not, whether the quality defects are within control or not, whether the operators in a particular line, whether all of them are present or not, whether the level of absenteeism is going above the permissible limit or it is within the permissible limit. So there are a host of things which have to be looked into by the production people on a daily basis. And there are some things which have to be monitored on an hourly or a half hourly basis. So that is the checklist of the production department. So all the departments of an export house, all of them have their own checklists. And the moment they feel that some process or something is going to get delayed, they immediately have to sound the alarm so that the required action is taken by the higher authorities so that the order does not get delayed for whatever reasons. So further, when we talk about the checklist and alarms, if you look at the product, then every product, every garment, there are certain tests which have to be conducted. Some of the tests are rarely seen, and there are some which are most often seen. They are very, very mandatory. So in line with that, the first one is color fastness to washing, rubbing, perspiration, lights. Now, any garment which is made of fabric, the fabric has to be sent to the lab to check whether the color fastness of the fabric is up to the required level or not. Color fastness to washing, to rubbing, to perspiration, and to light. Now we wear the garments and we go into the light, or there are garments which are stacked on the shelves in the retail store. And there are lights, the bulbs in the retail store. Those lights, they tend to fade the color of the garments which are closest to these lights. So that's why, and of course, when we wear the garment, we perspire. When we wear the garment, we sit or we rub against various surfaces. And of course, the garments have to be washed in order to be cleaned. Now imagine if you're washing the garment and the color of the fabric starts coming out. That is indicative of a very poor quality of the color fastness of fabric. Another parameter is, these are just some of the examples, not a comprehensive list. So second in line is stability. Stability is about shrinkage, whether there is shrinkage or elongation in the fabric. In case of wovens, plus minus 3% shrinkage or elongation is seen to be tolerable and practical. But shrinkages or extensions beyond 3% is not practical, and technically it has been seen to be uh, uh, adversely affecting the fit of the garment. So that's why any shrinkages or extensions beyond 3% has to be immediately corrected. That fabric cannot be used for production. And then there are some fabrics in case of which we have to check the endurance, especially denims or such garments, such fabric which are used for making outdoor garments, jackets, etc., where there is a lot of abrasion, and you may be wearing jackets or denims, and then you'll be sitting or sleeping, lying down, and things like that. So these fabrics are checked for abrasion, for pilling, for snagging. So these tests are done, and the rating is checked against the specification. If the buyer has a particular level, that this is the level of pilling that I want, not more than that, then the test will reveal whether the fabric is passing the test or not. And another such test is flammability, especially in case of nightwear, in case of especially nightwear for children. So flammability is the performance rating in appropriate test checked against specification. Now flammability is a test in which it is checked whether the fabric in which the night suit or any product has been made. So whether that fabric catches fire faster than the standard or less fast than the standard. So if the standard says that the fabric should not catch fire in 5 seconds, and if the fabric catches fire in 4 seconds, then the fabric is rejected. The fabric should catch fire only after 5 seconds, not before that, in order to pass the test. So that is the flammability test. Another example is that of production department. Now, if we and we've taken this example of production department because they have a very elaborate checklist. Now, the production checklist, some of them are, first is, let's say, the operator attendance report. So the first thing that we do is, today I go to the factory, go to the floor. First thing that I want to do is I'm going to ask all the supervisors of all the machine lines that what is the attendance today? How many people have absented themselves? That's the first thing, because if there are too many people who are absent, you would really have to make alternate arrangements in order to ensure that the production does not get hampered in any of the lines. And then machine SPI checking. Now SPI is stitch per inch. Now the machine can be set for different stitch per inch. And for any particular order, for all the garments, all the pieces, all the units, let's say you have a style of 2000 pieces, then that style, all the 2000 pieces should have the correct stitch per inch. Now, what has been seen is that the machines, they tend to, the stitch per inch tends to change during the day. The machine is continuously being operated. So in 3 to 4 hours, the SPI of the machine changes. Even though the indicator, the knob, is saying, let's say, 10 stitches per inch. So the knob says 10 stitches, but it might be actually making 9 stitches or maybe 11 stitches. So it's a rule that after every 2 to 4 hours, check the stitch per inch, whether it is correct or not. Now, if someone says that, if you ask the operator that, is the stitch per inch okay? He'll say yes. If you ask, have you checked the stitch per inch? Again, the answer will be yes. And the point is that one person, let's say supervisor, has to be entrusted with the task that to maintain the attendance, maintain the register in which the supervisor has to write at what time the machine SPI was checked and how many times was it checked during the day and during the last week. So that is one of the checklist. Now, inventory checking. See, the production people need fabrics and accessories to produce. Now, today morning when they start the production, they should have at least the material for at least 2 to 300 pieces, and only then they can start the production. So, does the production line have enough amount of fabric and accessories ready to be input, ready to be fed into the machines? So, inventory checking is very, very important. And as a thumb rule, every morning, the supervisor of a particular line checks whether he or she has adequate cut fabric and the accessories for tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So every supervisor has to maintain a buffer of at least 2 days. Today, what I am planning to produce, the material for that should have reached me 2 days in advance. So that is inventory checking. And that's an important production checklist. Of course, material movement, the movement of the raw material from the cutting department or from the accessory department to the production. That material movement has to be monitored. And then from the production department, the stitched garment will be moving to the washing department and to the ironing and pressing department, and then to the checking, and then to the packing department. So that material movement is again a part of the production checklist. Production department primarily looks at stitching of the garments. So when the garments are being stitched, who is checking the quality? Now, if the quality is being checked, there has to be a report. So the production manager asks for the stitching quality report for every hour from the supervisor. The quality is good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. It has to be captured in the register. And the register is to record the hourly stitch quality report. And that's how you run the production department. Nothing is verbal, everything has to be recorded. When the production manager comes in the morning, then he calls or she calls all the supervisors and asks each of them what was yesterday's biggest problem. Stitching problem, thread tension problem, stitch per inch problem, measurement problem, fit problem. What was yesterday's biggest problem? Whatever is the biggest problem has to be taken care of today. What was yesterday's line performance? So let's say there are 10 lines, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and likewise line 10. So what was yesterday's line performance? Now, how do we measure the line performance? The first thing is the line performance has to be recorded. So every supervisor has to write down what was the level of performance of his or her line. Now the performance is in terms of percentage. If the target given is of, let's say, 500 pieces per day, and if the line produces 400 pieces, it means the line's performance was only 80%. If instead of 500 pieces, the line produced 550 pieces, it means the line's performance was 120%. 10%, which means much better than the given target. Now, all of that has to be maintained on a daily basis. So when the production manager calls the supervisor should be ready with the stitch quality report, with the inventory checking report, with the machine SPI report, with the operator attendance report, what was yesterday's biggest problem. All of these things should be ready with the supervisor. Else, the production manager is going to blast off the supervisor. And then the production data capturing. Now, this is something wherein a factory may monitor and record the half-hourly production status or the hourly production status. Meaning to say that how much of a particular style has been produced from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning, from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock in the morning. So for every hour, in every line, how much of the garment has been produced. That is the daily production data. This is one of those key things which everyone asks. What was yesterday's production? What is let's say today's 9 to 10? Let's say it is lunchtime. So what was the production between 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., 11 a.m. to 12 noon? So that has to be done essentially, and that is written on a whiteboard, which is mounted in the cabin of the production manager. So all the supervisor would enter the production manager's cabin and write down the number of pieces which has been made in the last hour. So production data capturing, which is what is being produced and how much, and hourly line output report is in every hour how much of output is being done. Now, when we say output report, we are looking at the overlock machine or the single needle lock stitch machine, or how much of buttoning has been done and things like that. So production data capturing is how much is being produced every hour, how many garments, and hourly line output report is when we are looking at every hour which machine is producing how much. Sometimes hourly line output report is hourly line output report, all the lines, their hourly line output report will when added together will give the production data per hour. And then the WIP control and line balancing. Now WIP is work in progress. WIP control is the number of pieces which are there in a particular production line. So whether adequate number of pieces are there in the production line, whether there are bottlenecks or not, whether there are some people who are sitting idle or not, such things should not happen. And in case such a thing is happening, then immediately look for a remedy. And if there are bottlenecks or if there are people sitting idle, then the line has to be balanced immediately so that there is smooth flow of production and none of the operators are seen sitting idle, or none of the operators are seen having a pile of pattern pieces on their table because they're not able to cope up with the speed. So this is just a few of those checklists which are maintained by the production department. And if we look at the inspection checklist, then the inspection department on a daily basis, they are going to go to each of the production lines and they're going to check all the styles, whatever is being produced at various stages, and check whether all the stages are being handled properly or not. So few of the examples have been taken over here, few of the instances. First being finished fabric inspection. So finished fabric is, let's say a fabric is dyed or printed. So a dyed or a printed fabric is the finished fabric. Now that is what will be sent to the production department for production. So before sending it for production, it has to be inspected. So generally what is done is that if there are 100 rolls of fabric, then 10% of the fabric rolls are checked using 4-point system. The 4-point system is something which has been discussed in the previous sessions. And the second level is the lay height. When the production is happening in the, when the cutting is happening in the cutting department, then there are certain rules for different kinds of fabrics. Stable fabrics, the lay height can be more, and the unstable fabrics like georgettes and chiffons, velvets, etc., their lay height is lesser. So thumb rule is maximum height can be 6 inches, and on an average, it is 3.5 inches. But depending on the kind of fabric, the lay height, a practical lay height is known to the factory, and the cutting department should not break that rule. Third is cutting panel. Once the cutting has been done, then all the cutting panels should be checked whether they have been cut properly or not. Fourth is sewing inspection. Now, sewing inspection happens at two levels. One is that on all the machines where different operations are happening, the quality is checked by the supervisor randomly. And when all the operations have been done, and at the end, which is serial number 5, at the end there is a sewing table. So once the garment has been stitched completely, it is put on a table. On the table, 100% of the garments are inspected for all kinds of defects, for the measurements, for the fit, everything. And sixth is the sewing offline inspection, which is once the garment has been stitched and it has been, or the loose threads have been cut, the buttons have been attached, everything has been done, but it has not been sent for finishing. So just before the finishing, the sewing offline inspection happens where sampling method is done according to AQL 2.5% for daily production. Now we are going to talk about the AQL, acceptable quality level, in the subsequent sessions. What essentially needs to be understood over here is that before the finishing, the inspection is done. In fact, inspection is done at all the stages. When the fabric has been cut, when the stitching is happening in the production line. So the all the if there are, let's say, 10 machines which are being used to produce, then the operation being done on all the machines, they have to be checked. Once the garments have been stitched completely, then it has to be checked. When the garment has been washed and finished, again it has to be checked before it is put inside the poly bag and put inside the carton. So those are the host of inspection checklist, and we'll see when the finishing inspection is being done offline. When we are talking about equal 2.5% acceptable quality level, 2 to 3 out of 10 pieces of garments are checked for measurement. So if there are 100 garments, then roughly 20 to 30 garments are taken. Measurements are checked, and then the fit is also checked. And as a thumb rule, we can see here, because it's a garment made of fabric, and fabric, if you stretch them, they'll stretch a little. So there is a certain amount of allowance which is given for the length and the width. So if let's say for a length between 10 to 30 centimeters, let's say the sleeve length or the front length or the back length. So if those lengths are more than 10 centimeter and up to 30 centimeter, then half a centimeter allowance is given. Meaning to say that, let's say the length of the sleeve is 20 centimeter. So if the actual, upon measuring, if the length is seen as 20.5 centimeter or 19.5 centimeter, then it is allowed. But if the measurement is less than 19.5 centimeter, or if it is more than 20.5 centimeter, then it is a defect. Then it is not allowed. Then the fabric, the garment again has to be opened, and the stitching has to be done again so that the measurement is corrected. Similarly, if the measurements are more than 35 centimeter up to 80 centimeter, in that case, there is an allowance of roughly 1.5 centimeter. So if the measurement is, let's say, 80 centimeter actual, if the given measurement is 80 centimeter, and if the garment measures anywhere between 78.5 to 81.5 centimeter, it is accepted. If the measurement is less than 78.5 centimeter, or if it is more than 81.5 centimeter, then the garment will be rejected. It has to be sent for correction. If for very long dresses, let's say the total length of the dress is more than 80 centimeter. So when this measurement is being done, then in that case, the allowance is 2 centimeter, meaning to say that, let's say if the measurement is 85 centimeter, the measurement chart says 85 centimeter, then anywhere between 83 centimeter to 87 centimeter, the measurement will be accepted. Anything less than 83 centimeter or more than 87 centimeter will be rejected. That is the meaning of 2 centimeter allowance. So that is finishing inspection offline. And then we talk about the finishing table inspection, where 100% of the garments are inspected, including the measurements. So the garment will be inspected for whether the labels are attached correctly or not, whether all the labels are there or not, whether all the buttons are there or not, or whether the zipper is of the correct length or not, whether the stitching has been done correctly or not, all those things. And the measurements are also checked. And then we have the final inspection. The final inspection is when all the goods have been made, they have been washed and finished, and the hang tags and the price ticket and everything has been attached to it. They have been put inside the poly bag, and it has been put inside the carton. So once the entire production has been done and the entire shipment is ready in cartons, then the final inspection happens. So in this case, inspection is done by the quality inspector according to the sampling method. Sampling method is something that we'll discuss in the subsequent sessions. Now, for the final inspection, there is a host of checklist. Final inspection is the final time that the inspection is being done. After which, once this inspection is done and it has been passed, now the goods can be sent to, let's say, the airport or the seaport for export. Which means that the final inspection is very, very exhaustive and very, very strict. Now, if you are an inspector and you have been sent to a factory to do the final inspection, if you accept the inspection, then the shipment will be sent. If you reject, then the shipment will not be sent. It will have to be reopened. All the pieces have to be rechecked again, and then again packed and offered for inspection. So there are many things that have to be checked. Just a few of them have been listed here. One is that the shade should be correct. So you pick up the garment and you look at the shade which has been approved by the buyer. So you match them. And if they are correct, you put a tick mark on the first checkbox. Second is the garments. Let's say there are 2000 garments in one order. So all those 2000 garments, their shade should be the same. It should not be varying. That cannot happen. As a second checklist. Cut should be correct. Now, is the cut correct? That can be ascertained only when the inspector checks the neck, the collar, the sleeves, whether they are balanced or not, pockets are correct or not. So if the cutting has not been done correctly, it will be visible on the garment. So that's why neck, collar, sleeves, pockets, etc., those are checked. You can't have a longer right sleeve and a shorter left sleeve. So you just have to put one sleeve on the other and see whether the measurements are correct or not. If both of them measure the same, it means that the sleeves are balanced. And then measurement within tolerance of specification and whether the weight is correct or not. So like we discussed in the previous slide, that between 10 centimeter to 30 centimeter, there's a tolerance of 0.5 centimeter, and likewise. So measurement will be done, and then whether those measurements are within the tolerance or not. That is one thing that has to be corrected. Second is the weight. So the GSM of the fabric, that has to be correct. So that also has to be checked. The appearance should be correct. So when we say appearance, if the measurement is correct, does not mean that the appearance will also be correct. So the garments have to be put onto a live person or onto a dress form, and then it has to be evaluated whether the garment is appearing correct or not, whether it is looking pleasant, whether it is looking balanced or not, and whether the patterns are matching or not. Let's say you have a check shirt. So what is done is that when, let's say, the shirt left and the shirt right front, the checks should be matching from left to right. Similarly, when you put one sleeve onto the other, then the checks should be matching. It shouldn't be up and down. So there are a host of other inspection checklists, and whether the seams are finished correctly or not. So the seams and the stitches, which will be discussed in subsequent sessions, whether the seams have been finished correctly or not, stitching has been done correctly or not, and whether the seams have been finished correctly or not, whether the pressing has been done properly or not, and whether the accessories have been correctly applied and whether they're working or not. So you check whether the buttons have been placed correctly or not. The distance between the two button hole and the distance between the two buttons should be identical, otherwise it will be a big problem. Whether the main label has been put at the correct place or not, whether the size label has been put at the correct place or not, and whether it has been stitched correctly or not. All of that has to be checked by the person who is undertaking the final inspection. And there should be an absence of fabric faults and stains. No fabric defects should be there. So the quality inspector who comes for the final inspection is a very senior person who has a very good knowledge of fabric and the fabric defects. And that is how they will be able to detect if there are any problems with the fabric when the shipment is being checked. And like discussed earlier, the labeling has to be correct. The labels have to be put at the right places and they have to be attached or stitched properly. Now we come to the fag end of this session, and we will now look at one of the aspects of follow-up and facilitation role. Now, entire business, not just exports, a major part of all the people working in an organization is follow-up. Follow-up is you have explained something to another department, or if you have given a requisition to another department, or if you have given a program to be executed by another department. Once you have handed over something to be done, then you have to continuously monitor whether it is being done on time or not, and whether it is being done in the way you want it. So when you are continuously checking again and again, let's say after every 1 hour you are checking whether things are being done properly or not, within time or not. That action of yours, checking again and again, is called follow-up. And facilitation role is where, while you are monitoring, you also see whether any department or any person needs any help. And therefore, you may have to undertake the facilitation role, where you, if you are in a position to help the next department, you extend that facilitation uh, support. So if you look at the fabric or accessories, cutting, production, finishing, quality, shipping, finance, and accounts. Now let's say fabric. Now the fabric department, they will need manpower, they will need transport, because fabric has to have to be sent for processing, then it has to be brought back. You need intelligent people. Certain amount of intelligence is required. You need backup. Uh, if there are 4 persons working in a fabric department, if 1 or 2 persons are not there, who's going to take care of the functions uh, of the other 2 persons? So there has to be a backup. Someone else has to be immediately called in so that the work for the entire day does not suffer. And then there is risk sharing. Now, everything that we do, it can go wrong. So risk sharing is there, meaning to say that as a merchandiser, you pass on the order for fabric to the fabric manager. Now, when the fabric manager is getting the fabric developed and things like that processed, there is risk sharing. Never does the shade match exactly. So the risk is that the shades don't match so well. You have to convince the buyer that this is what best can be done and get the approval. So even if the dyeing of the fabric has been done by the fabric mill, but the risk has to be shared by the fabric mill and the factory. In the factory, the risk has to be shared between the fabric manager and the merchandiser. The merchandiser cannot simply say that the shade does not match and therefore I'm not going to send the fabric for approval to the buyer. First get it correct, only then I'll send. That is not done. And then of course communication and coordination. Merchandisers pass on the order to the fabric manager. Fabric manager passes on the details to the fabric mills. And when the fabric is being processed and when the fabric is coming to the factory, all the while the merchandisers are communicating and coordinating with the fabric manager. Now, this is the case between merchandiser and the fabric manager. Similarly, the fabric department, accessories, cutting, production, etc., 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 all of them are coordinating with each other and following up with each other and helping each other out. That is what is being illustrated in this slide. We come to the end of this session, and the motto of this entire session was, let's plan in a diligent manner and let's ensure that the order which has been secured is executed in the best format within the given time limit, achieving the correct quality and the delivery date. So with that, we come to the end of the session. Thank you.